My town is in shambles, and I feel some of the fault as my own. For the past 40 hours, I have been at my desk fielding calls from all over the area. People are hurting, dying, and there's so little I can do. When they can, someone from Greenbrier PD will drop off food, water, and fuel for the generator. The call center must stay open. It's something that has been ingrained into us as far back as middle school. It's why the pay is so high. It's why the building is built like a bunker, but generations of ease have led to things being neglected. Equipment that should have been updated was ignored, maintenance left undone. I need a break. I get an hour of sleep here and there, but the phones are always busy. There's been a call for volunteers, but no takers yet. By now, everyone has heard that I'm alone here, that everyone else that worked here is missing. I heard the mayor made a call to our governor, but as in times before we were told to handle our own affairs, we really are on our own. I haven't updated the board. I haven't filled out reports. I don't know how this will affect things in the future, but I simply don't have the time. All missing persons calls are being forwarded to that church-turned shelter on Hugh Everett Avenue. That way I can focus on the people who need immediate help. In the last hour, I talked to a mother through putting a tourniquet on her child's leg when a stray bullet came through their wall, shattering the bone and severing an artery. A man who needed an ambulance after his dog, who had been laying there peacefully, suddenly exploded, taking the man's arm with it. Then there was the case of someone claiming a raccoon had gotten into his gun cabinet and stolen a valuable M1 Garand. That last one wasn't worth the police time, not with everything else going on. Jordan showed up. I couldn't believe it. He walked in looking no different than normal. He went to his office, organized a few things, then came back out. Take a break, Kylie. You're tired, and your work performance is reflecting it. I'll man the phones for the next couple of hours. I just stared at him. The voice in my headset sounded muted. With an annoyed sigh, Jordan walked over and pulled my headset off of me and put it in himself. This is Greenbrier 911. Sorry for the inconvenience. Could you state the nature of your emergency? I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers, but I needed sleep. In my current state of mind, I doubted I wouldn't even understand anything he had to say. I made my way to the lobby. To my surprise, there was an air mattress with a blanket waiting for me. That's not all. There was a table with food and drinks. Most disturbing was the stack of my own clothes folded on the floor. It was almost enough to make me stomp back into the call room and demand an explanation, but that bed was too welcoming. I don't know what time it was when I went to sleep, and I don't know how long I slept for. When I woke up, I had to pee so bad I'm surprised I made it to the bathroom. After shedding 5 pounds of Monster and coffee, I felt a lot better. Leaving the room, I saw Jordan was still manning the phone. I didn't miss the stack of reports neatly organized next to him. He briefly glanced into my direction. Don't even start, Kylie. We have a lot of catching up to do. I slapped him hard enough to knock him out of his chair. He looked stunned for a moment. A little bit of fear cut through my anger as Jordan stood up. I was suddenly aware of just how isolated we were. He looked down at me. I could fire you for that. I humphed in disbelief. Really? And who would take my place? It's time to start talking, Jordan. Whose blood is that? Where is everyone? And why were you in my house? The phone rang. Jordan reached for it, but I hit the cancel button. Start talking or I'm out. He was pissed. The slap had been a minor annoyance, but hanging up really set him off. Kylie, you are so unconceivably stupid sometimes. The call center has to stay open, and that means answering calls. Jordan pushed me back before hitting the redial button. I let him feel the call. Someone likely needed help after all. But as soon as he was done, I was going to rip into him. The second I saw the green light go out, I dropped my ultimatum on him. Tell me what is going on, or I'm leaving. You'll have to handle everything yourself. Sooner or later, you'll pass out and the phones will go unanswered. Jordan watched me with cold eyes. As for the people who will die, you're okay with that? Because that is what leaving will lead to. He had me, and he knew it. I tried a different approach. Jordan, will you please just tell me what you know? My life has gone to hell the last month, and I would appreciate some answers. We sat in silence for an uncomfortable amount of time. I don't have all the answers, or even a lot of answers. The things you've dealt with aren't hell on earth. That would be the thing you let out of that room. We have to take the calls. I don't know why, but I know things get a lot worse if we don't answer the calls. Jordan stood and walked to his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a paper. It was a checklist. No, more like a list of rules. The station must be manned at all times. If for any reason the station is left absent, immediately take shelter until the situation is remedied. All incomplete calls must be redialed as soon as possible. The power must remain on at the station. Take any action necessary to achieve this. Do not enter a blank unless required. The station is the fourth and final barrier. As such, it shall receive the utmost attention at all times. I pointed to the fourth rule. Why is that blacked out? Why can't we enter? And what does 5 mean? Seriously, this just adds more questions. Jordan took the page and walked back to his desk where he locked it away. I don't know, Kylie. Maybe it's the basement. Maybe it's somewhere entirely different. As to Rule 5, I have a hunch as to what 2 the other barriers might be. Wait, this place has a basement? Jordan nodded. Yeah, there's an access outside. It's locked up tight though. Looks like it's been that way for a long time. I was glad that was the case. I wasn't ready to face any more basements. Not yet, at least. Okay, what are the other 2 barriers? And what are they barriers against? Really? Do I need to spoon-feed you everything? What 2 places have the most red pins around them? I glanced at the board, and I really didn't need to. I already knew. There were 2 obvious clusters, one in the woods at the top of a hill, and the other just outside of town. And the third? Jordan looked at the map. I don't know, but if those 2 clusters are 2 of them, and we're the 4th, I would assume the 3rd would be where there's no cluster at all. I followed his gaze. Darkwood Park. The government building? The section of Darkwood that was fenced off didn't have a single pin, causing it to stand out from the rest of the area. Just then, the phone rang. Jordan held out the headset. Your turn. I took it. Don't think I'm done here. I'll have more questions in a minute. As I sat to handle the call, Jordan walked into the lobby. Greenbrier 911, what is your emergency? There's a crucifix in my thigh, yelled a male voice with a bit of an accent. Okay, sir, let's get a few details and get some help on the way. Did someone do this to you, or was it self-inflicted? Ah, hell, you think I'd do this to myself? Nah, lady, I just woke up with my leg a-burning and bam. By golly, there it was, a cross under my skin. That's definitely a situation we can help. What is your location and name? Al Smith. My friends call me Big Al. I'm in my house down by Radio Lane, you know, the road that goes to the radio station. I punched in his info and sent it to Greenbrier FD. I have help on the way. Could you help me understand how this might have happened? Listen, little lady. I live 2 miles from the radio station on subsidized land. Need I say more? He really didn't, but I wanted to keep him on the line until help arrived or another call came in. I understand how that could. I was interrupted by the caller's pained yelp. Oh, sweet baby Ray. it's a growing. His breathing grew stressed. Where the mat, lady? Where the mat? Ah, owie, it's hurting. I bump his call up at urgency level. Help is on the way. Can you describe the situation so I can have them briefed when they arrive? The caller groaned in pain. It's by golly. There was a thunk, like the phone had dropped to the ground, followed by whimpering. Sir? Sir? Are you there? A single gasp was my only reply. Still, I remained on the line until the paramedics arrived. I heard them pounding on the door and announcing their presence. When there was no reply, I confirmed they were in the right place. They kicked down the thin door. What the fuck? Exclaimed one of the two medics. The other one shushed him. Hey, get a move on, he's still alive. I had to piece together what was happening by the sounds. It wasn't until I heard a chainsaw fire up that I really began to grow concerned. I was able to grab a few details from the fire department's dispatch. The medics had arrived to find a 56-year-old man unconscious in his dilapidated double wide. His left leg had been entirely replaced with the main beam of an ornate wooden cross. The cross beam had pressed its way into his right hip socket, shattering the bone. The other half of the cross beam had burst from his left hip. The top of the cross was buried deep in his bowels. Call it a miracle living hell, but Big Al was still alive. He would need both his legs amputated, and he would pull through. That call sucked, so I was almost glad when the next call was some Karen, angry about the music next door. Greenbrier 911, what is your... Listen, I'm only going to say this once. The kids next door have been playing the same song on full volume for an hour. Please have someone make them stop. Personally, I hate it when people cut me off. If you're dying, I'll be pretty lenient on your manners, but when it's just something like an annoying neighbor, you really ought to be more careful. Ma'am, this is 911. Please refrain from using this number for petty grievances. The police station has a non-emergency number for such things. As expected, she did not like hearing that. Excuse me, but I already called them, and they did nothing. I couldn't help but smile. Perhaps that's because it's not an issue? Now, normally, I'm not like that, but the stress of everything made me not really care in the moment. The woman huffed in offense. Does an hour of hearing nothing but this does not deserve at least a knock on the door? I heard what sounded like a window opening, and then a rhythmic beat, and the faint hint of lyrics. They were repeating over and over. Kylie's gonna die, Eileen's gonna die. Maybe a drive-by was warranted after all. There was a break between calls, so I went to the lobby to find Jordan. Annoyingly, he was nowhere to be found. I called out a couple of times, checked the outdoor security cameras, nothing. He had left the building. After a few choice words, I had to rush back inside as the phone had started ringing. I jumped into my chair and hit the button. Greenbrier 911, what's your emergency? You'll have to excuse my ignorance, but I didn't know who else to call. You see, I slipped. I believe I'm injured. Okay, ma'am, you called the right place. Could I get an address or location? The lady replied, oh, of course, silly me. It's 666 Exorcist Circle. I sat there for a moment, rubbing my temples. I really didn't need this right now. Ma'am, there's no Exorcist Circle in Greenbrier. The lady's tone took on a somber note. I know, dear, but that's what the voice made me say. The line went dead. As much as I didn't want to, I called back only to reach a disconnected line. I noted it on my report. A shiver ran through my body. This place was feeling a lot less safe the longer I stayed. Jordan returned about the time I was ready to pass out. He threw a duffel bag at me, then sat in the chair next to mine and put on a headset. Take your break, Kylie. Out of curiosity, I looked in the bag. It had more changes of clothes, as well as toiletries from my house. I blushed first with embarrassment, but then with anger. Jordan, did you go snooping around my house? He didn't even bother looking up from my report that he was needlessly going over. Nope. I shoved the bag into his face. Then how did you get this? Jordan brushed the bag aside. Kylie, you need a nap. You're being emotional. Your house is a crime scene. An officer handed that to me outside 10 minutes ago. I wasn't sure if I believed him or not. Either way, I wouldn't be apologizing. I admit it did feel good to change into fresh clothes again. There was a home-cooked meal waiting in the lobby as well. As much as I wanted to return home or to challenge Jordan, I was just too tired. I crashed into the cot and fell instantly asleep. When I woke up, I knew something was wrong. The lobby was quiet and dark. The generator wasn't running. I jumped from my makeshift bed and threw on a hoodie. I ran outside wincing at the feeling of rocks biting into my bare feet. The generator was located at the back of the building, under a little roof. It was an ancient but reliable relic dating back to the Second World War. We had never had a problem with it before. I came around the corner and saw someone standing in front of it. I couldn't see who they were, but judging by the height, I assumed it was Jordan. Are we out of fuel? The figure shook its head and turned the start switch. The old beast fired up, and the lights started to warm, revealing the man standing in front of me to be Andy. Andy, where have you been? I was worried. Things have been so crazy lately, and Jordan is being weirder than normal. And Andy? His face was expressionless. He was just staring. I shivered involuntarily. Andy, are you okay? I went to take a step closer, but hesitated. Something was off. Andy raised an arm in my direction. He then slowly rotated it until his palm was facing up. Curling his fingers, Andy motioned for me to come closer. I really didn't want to. Andy was someone I almost considered a friend. He was clearly in distress, but I didn't budge. It was then that he took a stiff step forward. I was frozen in place. Andy, please, what's going on? As he drew closer, I felt my eyes start to water. There was no humanity in his eyes, just an emptiness. He was nearly within reach. I couldn't bring myself to move. Someone walked up beside me, Jordan. He leveled a shotgun and without hesitation pulled the trigger. I screamed as my face was coated in Andy. His headless corpse wobbled for a moment before collapsing. I nearly fell as well, but Jordan pulled me backwards. Kylie, you're supposed to be manning the lines. Something inside me snapped. I drove my knee into Jordan's crotch as hard as I could. He grunted, but didn't let go of the back of my shirt. I punched and kicked at him in a futile effort. With a single arm around my chest, Jordan picked me up and started walking into the woods. My anger turned to fear. I had done it. I had finally pissed him off, and now he was going to kill me. I screamed for help, but Jordan took no notice. It wasn't long before he threw me onto the ground. I lay there on the wet leaves looking into a trench. At the bottom lay at least a dozen bodies. I struggled not to scream again. I tried to scramble back, but Jordan pushed me back to the edge. Look at them, Kylie. I didn't want to. The smell of blood and shit was enough. Jordan insisted. Look at them. Tell me what you see. His voice, terrifyingly calm. So I did. I looked at what I had thought was a pile of people, but it was a pile of persons. They were all Andy. Every single body was dressed the same and looked the same, down to the shotgun wounds in various places. You need to start trusting me, Kylie. Had that thing gotten a hold of you, it would have killed you, just like the first one nearly did to me. Grabbing my arm, he pulled me to my feet. Now we need to get back to the call center. To be continued.